Welcome to Health Facts with Normani Ricks. I am your host, Normani Ricks. I like to start off each episode with a little known health fact. Did you know that the skin is actually an organ? Did you know that the skin is the largest organ in the body? A lot of people don't know that. So the skin is supposed to keep out bacteria, chemicals, environmental toxins, but in all actuality, we're putting a lot of these toxins on our skin and getting them into our bodies. So today I have a very special guest, Miss Aly Cohen. She's a doctor, she's a rheumatologist, and she's very interested in environmental medicine. So welcome to the show, Dr. Aly Cohen. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Normani, for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out. That's awesome. So I'm happy to be here.
All right. Let's talk about how you got started into being interested in environmental medicine, because you're a rheumatologist.
Yeah, so I'm a rheumatologist. So I'm a doctor who takes care of a lot of diseases that you may have heard of course, autoimmune disease like multiple sclerosis, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, things where your body attacks itself. And about 10, 15 years ago, well, I would say almost 10 years ago, my dog got sick and I got really upset about it. And I write about this in the book that I wrote. I didn't know why he got sick for such an unusual autoimmune disease. Interestingly enough, the dog had an autoimmune disease, and which is rare. So as I was trying to figure out what triggered his immune system to attack itself, which is what happens in human disease, I was learning about maybe his dog food being contaminated or his drinking water or something other than him as just a golden retriever, 4.5 years of age. That's just so unusual. And as I was exploring the food we feed him, the canned foods, the pesticides that are in our backyard in New Jersey, the flea and tick collar chemicals, the powders that we put on him to make him smell pretty, like we do as humans, everything, plastics that he was sucking on, his plastic toys. As I was learning about this, and this is only about 10 years ago, I started to understand how little regulation there is for human products. And I just couldn't believe it, because here I was a doctor. I thought that if this was true, I would have learned it in medical school. And in fact, medical school doesn't train in a lot of really important areas, one of which is nutrition, which you may have an idea about, that they don't teach nutrition in medical school, which is absurd and crazy. But they also don't teach environmental health, which is how our environment affects our health. And that includes what you said, the things we put on our skin can seep into our body. Of course, we have medications that are intentionally designed to go through our skin to get to our joint pain or to fix our smoking habit or to make us not nauseous, with our patches. But we also have feminine care products that we put inside our body in the vaginal canal. And those chemicals that are in those products that are not vetted for safety get absorbed even quicker than through the skin. So we have to really kind of think about, and it took about 10, 12 years and a book or two. I wrote a textbook as well, but this is the consumer book called Non-Toxic. It took 10 years to formulate not only what the science was, but then how to convey it to the audience, to people, to consumers, to my platform, to high school students and college students that I teach now regularly. So the idea is not only to understand it, which was a big steep climb for me, but also just to formulate it into the right packaging so I can teach your audience a little bit.
Okay. So let's talk about where you said you teach students and teenagers. Let's talk about that, because I know that teenagers are trying to smell good, are trying to look good. They're putting a lot of stuff on their skin because of acne and all of that stuff. Like, how do they know what's the right thing to use and what's the wrong thing to use in their developing bodies?
Yeah, absolutely. And the word developing that you just mentioned is critical, because we can almost argue that maybe as you get a little older, all of our ability to break down some of these chemicals. And by the way, there are now 95,000 chemicals that are used in the United States from all over in all of our products. That's cleaning products and cosmetics and fabric chemicals like non-stick, non-stain guard, all of the plastic chemicals that are in our plastic packaging for food, our food chemicals, our drinking water contaminants. We have air fresheners, we have laundry, fragrance, we have a lot of stuff. So 95,000 is where we're at. And this was only over the last 200 years or 150 years. So the human body has not had a time to really manage these chemicals. Mm-hmm. And in the United States, there's no regulation on any of these chemicals. I mean, this is what's mind-blowing. This is the key point that people should understand.
Wait a minute. In the United States, so what are other countries doing about these things?
Well, Europe is a little bit better, but they've banned 1,200 chemicals. In the United States, we've only banned 5 chemicals over the last, 50 years.
5? So, oh my God.
Okay. Right. It's in favor of the manufacturing. The United States is really, promotes free trade and manufacturing and all that. But what they do is they leave the consumer out. So you're not aware of, even if there's any testing, which there's none required, by the way, before these chemicals go into our products and end up on our shelves, no testing that is required for safety or toxicity, especially in children, pregnant women, and people with immune compromised systems. So what I'm trying to teach the teenagers that you mentioned is that I've realized, after having lectured to doctors that are colleagues and, creating programs for doctors to teach them, that the people who want this most are young people. People who are very conscious, as you and I were when we were their age. They are conscious of what they put on their bodies. They want to know how they should smell. They want to figure out what they put on their body. And so what I teach them, one of the classes I do is I'll take bags full of, nail polish and body spray and hairspray and shampoo, conditioner, relaxants, feminine care products, you name the product, and I'll bring them in bags from your big box stores that everyone has access to. And I'll toss them to the kids, and they'll all giggle because tampons go to the jocks and the Axe body spray goes to the girls, and everyone's giggling. But then I teach them how to download a really important website called Environmental Working Group. They have a website called ewg.org/skindeep, or their Healthy Living app, which is free. Healthy Living, it's an app that's free. And what I have them do, because these people, this Environmental Working Group that designed these website and this app, are a nonprofit. Their job is to vet out products, and they've actually vetted out close to 75,000 products.
Oh,
and so awesome. What they'll do is they'll look them up, and they'll tell me what the rating is, 0 to 10. 0 is the best, 10 is the worst. Then they'll look at what's in it, because they can list what's in those products, like Axe body spray or secret deodorant or antiperspirant, I should say, which is worse. Or perfumed, anything you can think of, self-tanner, everything, hairspray. And then they can choose what's a better alternative and why, because they'll have another rating. So it's really giving people the fishing rod instead of the fish, and really teaching young people and everybody, because I have a whole chapter on it in my book on personal care products. If we can figure out how to do that for ourselves, then we don't have to be dependent on the companies themselves disclosing anything. Like recently, there was tons of news on Procter & Gamble with tons of chemicals like benzene in their products. I mean, and this made the news, but what if it doesn't make the news?
Right.
So
hold on. I heard you say antiperspirant is worse than deodorant. Can you elaborate on that?
I sure can, because antiperspirant, the way antiperspirant is designed is it has very, very tiny molecules of aluminum. That's the most common ingredient, that they're so small, they get into the sweat gland and they hold sweat in the gland so it doesn't come out, so you don't feel sweaty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the whole purpose, is that the water will follow the solute, which is the aluminum molecules. Well, it turns out aluminum is pretty toxic stuff. And, if you're building, and it's also important because if it's near the breast tissue, we have a real issue with breast cancer in this country, and a lot of it is environmentally induced. 90% of breast cancer is from environment. 10% is genetic.
Wow.
BRCA genes and a bunch of other genes. So what I'm trying to teach people is not only is the aluminum a problem by the way it's designed, that's how it works to keep you wet, less wet, which we like. But if you take that component out, the antiperspirant out, and you just get deodorant and look at those products, those are going to be healthier. You might be a little wetter under the armpit. I'll be honest. It's hard to find some good ones, but I have some good ones that I've tried out. But at least it won't have that aluminum component, those chemicals and fragrance and things that get into our sweat tissue or sweat glands and then circulate throughout the body. So definitely one of the key things is always give up antiperspirant, look for deodorant, and then vet it on ewg.org/skindeep. And you'll find very easy to find deodorants everywhere, big box stores. You can order online now. And that's near your breast tissue. So it's a better thing to do for your course of your lifetime.
Okay. So the first time I ever heard about someone saying not putting toxins or chemicals on my body was when I was pregnant with my daughter, and they said, don't get a hair relaxer. So as a Black woman, sometimes we get our hair relaxed. So they were talking about, don't get a relaxer while you're pregnant. And that was the first time I was like, why? So I think that a lot of times we take those things for granted, as far as like straightening our hair, coloring our hair, relaxing our hair. I think that's kind of the first time I heard about chemicals on your skin, or, affecting your body.
Yeah, well, actually, I was told the same thing about my hair, and I color my hair even now. I'm not pregnant, I don't think. It'd be a miracle, but I'm, we all love, as women especially, we love to be pretty. We love to put on cool stuff and nails and hair. And I've changed a lot of that attitude over the years, even though I used to do a lot of this stuff. My hair is my last holdout, but the reason is that, and you can enjoy things that you love. You just have to vet out the products. And I'm blanking on one of the products. I was in one of the schools, and there was a couple girls that were sitting together, African-American girls. And I remember being in Target, and I was asking an African-American woman, which of these products on this shelf are really popular? And I popped them in my bag, and I took them to the school because I wanted to check to see that the popular ones, there are safe ones and there are unsafe ones. And when I gave them to these young girls, their eyes lit up because I thought of them, and I wanted them to know that even within not just, conventional products that are out there, but African-American women have another set of chemicals that are really, I would say, directed and marketed to them because the hair quality is different, right? So in terms of using things like placenta chemicals and lye and some of these other things that have been made their way into products for African-American women, they're not so much worse than other women's, but the idea is that all of these chemicals during pregnancy are probably a bad idea, considering it seeps into our body, into our bloodstream, and we don't want to feed a kind of a growing fetus that's so vulnerable during really critical developmental windows, chemicals that aren't even tested for safety. So why would you do that? Mm-hmm. But the idea is not to condemn people. I'm really trying not to blame anyone for their choices, because if you don't know, you don't know better. But if you do know, you do know better. Mm-hmm. And that's what I really wanted to do. And I hate to sound like a, crazy person marketing this book, but I wrote this book for everybody to have tools to do this. And there's a whole chapter on what to do when you're trying to get pregnant in terms of chemicals, from drinking water, how to filter it, to cleaning your home and setting up home for baby and trying to figure out what products are safe or not. But even what to put in your body for food in terms of the quality of your food, what to do for hair. All of it is about just being human and making good decisions based on good information. That's all I wanted to achieve.
So I definitely want you to talk to everybody about how to make their drinking water safer, because I feel like that's like a huge thing in the United States. So I'm sure a lot of people want to know this.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I think for most of my life, I never questioned drinking water. To me, it was like not even a big deal, right? I figured, it's regulated. It comes through municipal tap water. 80% of the country of the U.S. is served by tap water, which is wastewater management facilities. There's 160,000 of them in the United States that serve 80% of our water. The other 20% of our population is served by wells. So it's mostly rural environments, like in farming towns and places with low populations. But what's interesting is that these 160 water treatment plants that serve my water, maybe yours as well, you're in a city, they actually only follow a law from 1974 called the Safe Drinking Water Act that only manages and looks for and fixes 91 chemicals. In 50 years, that number has not changed.
Oh, wow.
So we've now had 95,000 chemicals, increasing every year because they're allowed to, right, without testing. So nothing holds them up. But our water system only manages 91 chemicals by law and only has done that for 50 years. So what we're dealing with now is that all these chemicals are making their way into water, into our drinking water, into our cooking water, into our showers, into our bodies, really. And we're finding that with levels of water affecting blood levels and urine levels and other body fluids that are tested. So the punchline is this. I believe everyone, and this has become such an important issue to me because, again, our bodies are made up 75% or more of water. Yeah. It's the only way to get rid of chemicals. If you're trying to just wash out chemicals, you certainly don't want to add them back in with your drinking water, right? Exercising and all that. So we got to get our water right. Okay. And the way to do it is that everyone, as far as I can see in the world, in the whole world, should be filtering their drinking water. Because if you don't filter it yourself and know something about filtering, you're just going to take what's given to you. And that could be lead in your pipes. It could be PVC plastic, which is now what lead is replaced with. So you're getting plastic chemicals on top of pesticides and, runoff and fertilizer and things from flooding. All of that can get into your drinking water in addition to the chlorine and all the detergents they purposely add into that water to try to clean it. So we got lots of chemicals in water. So the first thing you want to think about is filtration is what kind do you want? I mean, there are pitcher filters that are carbon that a lot of people know about, like Brita Zero Water, but there's a lot of better companies out there. Okay. In terms of that carbon block, it's very limited in what it can take off. What I recommend is if you're living on the go and you're like in apartments or college or like you just really don't have a settled place, then I think pitchers are great. And to look them up in terms of quality, there's some really good ones out there. I don't particularly talk about brands, but I did just get off a really good podcast. And some of the best ones are Water Drop. I don't know if this is backwards for you or not, but the one at the top. Mm-hmm. The one at the top is considered better than the ones at the bottom. Okay. And so that's a pretty good podcast. And pretty reputable in terms of their recommendations, but essentially a pitcher is a carbon block. So it's limited, but better than nothing. Okay. And then you can move all the way up to something which I recommend because nowadays they're not as expensive as they used to be. Like everything else that came down in price is reverse osmosis. Yes. Reverse osmosis is a really, really dense material that water has to go through a very, lots of surface area. And then it fills the little tank under your sink. And then the faucet draws off of that tank. So you can actually make water like while you're sleeping. So it's not like it's immediate, which only takes off, limited contaminants. This works very hard to get a lot of water clean. So reverse osmosis filters, they run like $250, $200, maybe $300 if you get them from the right company. And I'll share some companies with you, but I'm not going to do it on this website because I stay clean as I can be. I don't want to be bought and I don't take endorsements and branding and I don't promote any of that stuff. But I will tell you reverse osmosis, you can get them relatively inexpensively. Testing your water is always ideal, but the kits can cost around $200. So this is a luxury of the rich. Okay. So instead of just testing, I just say, get reverse osmosis and you're going to get a large portion of crap out of your water. If you want to get more specialized, you can get a $200, water testing kit, see specifics of what to get rid of, and then choose your reverse osmosis according to sort of some of those contaminants. It's a little complicated, but the long and the short of it is reverse osmosis is acceptable and, accessible and not too costly. It takes about $140 for a plumber to put it in 1 hour only. And it's about $40 a year for cartridges. So that's your typical good quality certified NSF certified reverse osmosis. So that's kind of where I like people to go, because if you're going to do this, do it right or don't do it, because I really want people to just filter the water any which way they can is a good start.
Okay. So let's talk about doing things right. So I know that I feel like a lot of people are aware that there are a lot of toxins in cleaning products. So how do you do it right? Do you put on gloves? Do you put on a mask and clean up?
You don't buy the junk to begin with. There you go. If you don't buy the really toxic products to begin with, you do not have to walk around with gloves and worry about it getting in your skin. No one in a regular home should need any products that require gloves. I'm talking people should go back to grandmom's cleaning stuff, white vinegar, lemon juice, baking soda, sea salt for scrubbing, Castile soap, borax. I mean, these are some of the most old school, basic cleaners. You can make a clean, like for instance, I have do-it-yourself cleaning products in here where it's like 3 ingredients from any store you can find, and you've made a surface cleaner, you've made a laundry detergent, you've made an oven cleaner, you've made a sink stuff. So in other words, we don't need all those bells and whistles we've been told we do. It comes with colors, it comes with preservatives, it comes with really strong, harmful chemicals, and chemicals that we now know disrupt our hormones. They're called endocrine disrupting hormones or endocrine disrupting chemicals, EDCs. And the book talks a lot about EDCs because that's really the problem, is that these chemicals that we're talking about have this ability, was discovered, it's great science on this worldwide, that they can mess with our hormones. They can affect risk for breast cancer, prostate cancer, testicular cancer. They can affect fertility and make us less fertile. They can affect growth and development. They can affect brain development if you're pregnant, in terms of a fetus. So in terms of some of the physical and mental changes that can go on with a fetus. So, these chemicals can cross the placenta, and they can affect our hormone levels. They can affect thyroid. Insulin, is a hormone. So it can affect our diabetes risk or make our diabetes less controlled. So these are things that we want to think about. Chemicals are not needed. They really serve no real purpose, the majority of them. And the best way to protect yourself with cleaning products is don't bring, air fresheners in, carpet powders, and then vet, again, on Environmental Working Group, ewg.org, they have a whole cleaning product vetting where they can tell you which products, which brands are actually better than others. So they're a great company to look at cosmetics, cleaning products, a lot of stuff. I again have the do-it-yourself and recommendations, but there are so many options that are better than the junk that's out there.
Okay. So what do you suggest for air fresheners?
So air fresheners, what I do, because our home is one of the most toxic places you can have, right? Because we're very sealed. Our windows are sealed. We're economically sealed for our bills, our heating bills and all that stuff. So we don't get a lot of airflow. One of the things to do is don't bring in air fresheners, synthetic candles, and incense. All those are made up of a lot of junk. And all of those chemicals, after they air off, they end up on our floors, they create dust. So one of the things to do is open windows. Don't buy all of these chemicals that we think we need for every cleaning surface that they've marketed to you, doorknobs and handles and windows. And it's like, come on now, you just need one surface cleaner and that's it. And open windows for a good 20 minutes, half hour a day to avoid all these chemicals loading up. Dusting with a wet wipe, not chemical wipes, the ones that have chemicals on them to pick up the chemicals you're trying to get rid of. It's like, you want to just water and paper towel will get up all these toxic dust piles, which are really loaded with a lot of harmful chemicals, especially with pets and young children who are kind of touching them and getting in their bodies. I also say put plants in your home. Plants are really great at cleaning the house. Wow. Dracaena, mother-in-law's tongue, cat's claw. There's a bunch. Is it cat's claw? There's a lot of, I have them all in the book, they're listed, but I'm so old right now that I can't remember. But there's tons of plants that have been tested to clean the air and to create better air quality. So, if you have a history of asthma or emphysema or COPD, if you have allergies, the best thing to do is not bring these chemicals and all these junky products into your life. It's cheaper. And in the long run, you won't get them in your lungs and you won't get them on your skin and your baby's and your pet's skin. Or paws. So the idea is don't bring them in to begin with. And it's a remarkable thing to clear house.
Okay. So I also wanted to ask you, like in today's world of social media where everybody's putting on all this makeup, why are there toxins in makeup? And why is that even necessary to put toxins in makeup?
Well, many toxins are added for colors. Parabens, a lot of chemicals are to add bright colors. So it's really concerning to, even like the most expensive lipsticks like Chanel Bright Red, those can be some of the most toxic, even more toxic than even some junky lipstick at a corner pharmacy. So you got to know that it's not the price of the company. It's really looking up each brand on a vetted website like EWG's Skin Deep database. Okay. Now that's one thing. The second thing is that there's chemicals added, like mercury is actually added to a lot of products because it's antibacterial and antiviral components. Well, that's pretty toxic stuff. Let me tell you, you don't want mercury in anything. Lead is also part of a lot of colors. There are colors that make fragrance called phthalates, which are associated with endocrine disruption that are added. So any fragrance in any product, be it cleaning or personal care, phthalates are added to make that fragrance last longer and to stay on the shelf longer. And that's a problem because really all of those fragrances are a problem. So you want to try, if you can, to find products that are fragrance free, certainly detergents and cleaning products. But in terms of makeup, listen, it's a very big market. I would say the vast majority of the stuff out there is pretty junky, but I was really surprised when I brought in some really interesting nail polishes and cosmetics to my high school students. The nail polish that was like really dark and it looked like it was like maybe filled with a lot of chemicals was actually much lower rated than the one that was clear. And so I don't want people to think that just on first sight that something may look more toxic than it is. You always have to vet it out. And you can be very surprised and excited about your products. That's why I want people to know is you can live your life with tons of cool stuff. It just has to be looked at and vetted. That's all.
Okay. So another, I guess, thing that's going on right now is a lot of people are talking about detox. There's all these detox teas. There's all these detox drinks. So like, how do you recommend that someone detoxes their body from all of these chemicals?
Yeah, I have a whole chapter on detox. And I say that because I don't believe in gimmicks. I don't believe in doing weird cleanses and high colonics and, taking in weird amounts of supplements. I really think start with anthropology and evolution and think about where we were millions of years ago. That hasn't really changed except for all these products and chemicals. So going back to things like, again, filtering your drinking water, looking at food very, chemicals in food are pretty bad for us. So, want to go for like whole foods and natural foods. You don't want to go in organic, of course, whenever you can. Frozen organic food is actually cheaper than fresh and has all of the nutrient value that you could want, just as flash frozen right out of the ground. Whereas fresh organics actually travel a long distance and lose a lot of nutrient value. So I say to people, get a water filter, whatever you choose. Start thinking about less processed foods, fast foods, things that come in a box or a can, and try to go for plants and eat more of a plant-based kind of an organic diet. You can also wash vegetables and fruits in baking soda or white vinegar, even if it's not organic. Okay. And then start getting rid of cosmetics and things that you haven't checked out on EWG's Skin Deep. So you can know whether or not your lipstick's worth it or not, because we eat our lipstick over time, So you want to check out your lipsticks and all your makeup and swap out, antiperspirant for deodorant. And then I would say, look at your cleaning products and go back to basics. Okay. So just those things alone is really helpful. But then in terms of other detox, exercise, sweating out chemicals is really, really helpful and very possible. And I talk about all these different, ways to do that, but also what studies show on terms of methamphetamines and illegal drugs, 9/11 victims with all those chemicals from 9/11, how they had to detox many of those chemicals. They did it through exercise and sauna. And so sweating is really, really valuable to the human physiology of getting rid of chemicals. Getting good sleep is important. While we sleep, there's actually components of our brain that wash out chemicals we've collected during the day. It's new science. It's really remarkable, but we really need that. So getting good quality and quantity of sleep helps us detox the chemicals that we've been exposed to. And certainly, getting rid of toxic social media, toxic people, we all know those, getting rid of toxic people is just as important as toxic chemicals, in my opinion. But really managing relationships and bringing positivity, bringing spirituality, bringing community, bringing nature, which is remarkable for the brain. Right. So those are the kind of detoxes I look at instead of a cleanse or a 30-day this or this supplement. I don't believe in all that. I believe there's a lot lower hanging fruit that we could all grab.
Okay. Yeah. So I feel like toxic people probably activate the stress hormones.
They do. I mean, yes. And we weren't used to, for millions of years, we were not around people, but we also had to live in communities to survive. And now we have people that break you down and say bad things. We've got all sorts of political unrest. We got, vaccine issues. I mean, to me, it's a really stressful world. And I think that we need to sort of turn off the news, turn off things that really, create disruption in our mind and don't let us heal even, so I think being courageous to do that is it's not easy, but it's important, and it's self-care, and it's not lightly taken, but it's something we should all think about.
Right. So Dr. Cohen, how can people reach you, get in touch with you, hear some of your speeches? How can they find you online?
Well, thank you for asking. So I actually post Monday, Wednesday, Friday on Facebook on my platform that's called The Smart Human. So it's Facebook, The Smart Human, on Instagram, The Smart Human, Twitter. I have a podcast that's called The Smart Human Podcast that talks about a lot of these cool issues. I'll have like a specialist in building materials, or a lawyer that talks about environmental health in buying a house. Or I'll have someone who talks about, like my partner for this book, who really was responsible for getting the really horrible chemicals out of baby bottles called BPA. So I have really interesting people that in very easy language talk about their specialties. So the Smart Human, the website is thesmarthuman.com, where I have tons of videos and podcasts that people can listen to. And then, of course, my favorite thing in the world is to try to find, Non-Toxic is on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. It's on every, bookseller, but it's really the guide. And I fought hard for the word guide because it's a guidebook. It's very easy. Anyone can read it. It's meant for, high school students and up, to really dive in to understand what the problem is and then how to solve it. And it's for life. And I'm in Princeton. So if anyone wants to see me as a patient, which, fine with me, as a rheumatologist, and I do integrative medicine and environmental health. I do telemedicine, so you don't have to live in Princeton to see me, but I do a lot of consulting through telemedicine. So I can consult with someone about their, rheumatology, autoimmune issues, anything. So you can just look me up on alycohenmd.com. ALYCOHENMD.com is my practice website.
Okay. One thing that I want to just kind of put out there as a takeaway is the fact that you're teaching teenagers these things so that when they grow up, they can pass it down. I think that's very, very, very important because the newer generation, they need to have new tools, especially with this technological and advanced world. So I just want to say kudos to you for doing that. And I really
see that I did a TED
that was an aha moment for me.
Yeah, no, listen, I appreciate it. And I know that really seems to really strike a chord with you. I did a TED Talk called How to Protect Your Kids from Toxic Chemicals. And it's on YouTube. You just type in on the YouTube channel, Aly Cohen, and you'll see a 13-minute video about this whole problem and how it pertains to high school students. And if you have a high school student, please show them this video because it really will open their eyes to the issues and really what the plan is here. Yeah. But hopefully it's entertaining, but it's on YouTube. It's called How to Protect Your Kids from Toxic Chemicals. And listen, this is my mission in life. I have a day job. So, my goal is just to educate people anywhere, anytime. I never refuse a podcast for any reason. I'll go anywhere to speak. I'll speak online. But the idea is that people have to know that we are getting sicker as a culture. We're getting sicker as a human race. And that's why I named my platform The Smart Human. This is about all of us. And we have to think about how are we going to choose better and move the markets through purchasing power and not put up with all of these chemicals that are in all of these products that are marketed to us, and what they do to us and why we need to stop that for future generations for their health. So, please pass all of this along, everyone who's listening.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. And this has been Health Facts with Normani Ricks.